Trying to figure that out. No, but we're getting to
The Senate will come to order. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move a call of the Senate.
A call of the Senate has been moved and properly sustained. Will the sergeants please close the doors, allow no senators to leave, and return those who are absent from the chamber?
Not yet. I didn't start yet. We're going on my schedule tonight.
It's not true. We're going on their schedule.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Bridges.
Here.
Cook. Quorum. Court. Grouder. Danielson. Donovan. Finberg. Fields. Foote. Gardner. Janal. Gonzalez. Hill. Heisey. Holbert. Lee. Lundeen. Marble. Moreno. Pedersen. Priola. Doesn't count. Rankin. Rodriguez. Scott. Smallwood. Sonnenberg. Story. Tate. Todd. Williams. Winter. Woodward. Zenzinger. Pedersen. Scott. Priola. Danielson.
Lundeen and Woodward. There's no way you can. Lundeen and Woodward? Lundeen and Woodward?
Lundeen.
Oh, I tried to call somebody on that one and nobody answered. I did not.
Is that everyone?
Regular help though. It just doesn't help.
Who do we need?
Oh, Woodward.
No,
Mr. President. Woodward.
Absent.
Mr. President.
Here, with 34 present, 1 absent, 0 excused, we have a quorum. Committee reports. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the call be raised.
The motion is to raise the call. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the call is raised. Committee reports.
April 29th, 2019, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1275 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1326 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. Our recommendation will be placed on the consent calendar. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1073 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1287 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Finance. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1159 be amended as follows. As so amended, be referred to Committee on Appropriations with a favorable recommendation. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Finance. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1168 be amended as follows. As so amended, be referred to Committee on Appropriations with a favorable recommendation. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Finance. After consideration of merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1142 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 29th, 2019, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration of merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1328 be amended as follows. As so amended, be referred to Committee to hold a favorable recommendation. April 29th, 2019, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration of merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1226 be amended as follows. As so amended, be referred to Committee on Appropriations with a favorable recommendation. April 29th, 2019, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration of the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1330 be referred to Committee to hold a favorable recommendation. April 29th, 2019, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration of merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1236 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 29th, 2019, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration of merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1017 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1310 be amended as follows. As so amended, be referred to Committee on Appropriations with a favorable recommendation. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Judiciary. After consideration of merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1297 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 29th, 2019, the Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs and Consideration had hearing on following appointments, recommends appointments, posted on consent calendar confirmed. Members of the Colorado Civil Rights Commission for term expiring March 13th, 2023. Kendra Meredith Anderson of Denver, Colorado, serves as a majority business owner with employees numbering more than 5 but less than 50 employees and has an unaffiliated member appointed. April 29th, 2019, Committee on Finance, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following. House Bill 1322 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations.
Mr. Carpenter, will the record reflect that we have 34 present, 1 absent, 0 excused? Introduction of bills.
House Bill 1005 by Representatives Buckner and Wilson, Senator Todd and Priola, concerning an income tax credit for certain early childhood educators.
Finance.
House Bill 1009 by Representatives Kennedy and Singer and Senators Priola and Pedersen, concerning sports for persons recovering from substance use disorders in connection therewith, expanding a program in the Department of Local Affairs that provides vouchers for housing assistance to certain individuals, creating standards for recovery residents for purposes of referrals and title protection, creating the Opioid Crisis Recovery Funds Advisory Committee, creating the Recovery Resident Certification Grant Program, and making an appropriation.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1064 by Representatives Sullivan and Baszling, Senators Foote and Cook, concerning limiting requirements that victims must opt in to affect their rights in criminal proceedings in connection with making an appropriation.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1107 by Representative Coleman, Senators Fields and Priola, concerning the creation of the Employment Support and Job Retention Services Program within the Division of Employment and Training in the Department of Labor and Employment in connection with making an appropriation.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1161 by Representatives Buckner and Wilson, Senators Todd and Priola, concerning the creation of the Health and Wellness through Comprehensive Quality Physical Education and Instruction Pilot Program in connection with making an appropriation.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1215 by Representative Singer and Senator Crowder, concerning legislative recommendations of the Colorado Child Support Commission in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1276 by Representatives Monteo and Exum, Senators Todd and Quorum, concerning providing financial support for comprehensive programs to assist ninth grade students in completing high school and in connection with creating the ninth grade success grant program and making an appropriation.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1320 by Representatives Kennedy and Lontine, Senator Winter, concerning requiring certain healthcare providers to be accountable to their communities.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1323 by Representatives Harrod and Van Winkle and Senators Todd and Lundeen, concerning exemption from state sales tax for occasional sales by charitable organizations.
Finance.
House Bill 1324 by Representatives Cutter and Byrd, Senator Foote, concerning motions to dismiss certain civil actions involving constitutional rights.
Judiciary.
House Bill 1331 by Representatives Hanson and Ransom and Senator Rankin, concerning removing the limit on the departments with which the Evidence-Based Practices Implementation for Capacity Resource Center can collaborate.
Appropriations.
House Bill 1332 by Representatives Hanson and Senator Zinzinger, concerning the use of money in the Colorado Telephone Users with Disabilities Fund to provide talking book library services for certain persons with disabilities in connection with making an appropriation.
Appropriations.
House Bill 1335 by Representatives Gonzalez Gutierrez and Bachenfeld and Senators Lee and Cook, concerning expungement of juvenile records in connection therewith, making clarifying changes to the expungement process and procedure and clarifying the juvenile record expungement applies to municipal courts.
Judiciary. Please add Senator Woodward to the roll call. Message from the House.
House has voted to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1189, 1244, 1003, 1138, 1183, 1222, 1247, 1051, 1269, 1274, 1239. As repassed, the bills so amended, the House has adopted the first report of the First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 90 as printed in the House during April 18th, 2019. As repassed, the bill so amended, the bill is returned here with the Speaker's appointed Representative to place Representative Jackson as House conferee on the First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 2.
Conference committees to report.
First report of the First Conference Committee on Senate Bill 90, the support of Missouri Revised Bill to the President, Senate, and Speaker, House of Representatives. The First Conference Committee appointed on Senate Bill 90 concerning the operation of peer-to-peer motor vehicle sharing businesses. Amendment reports as agreed upon the following: one, that the Senate has ceded the House amendments made to the bill and the amendments appear in the revised bill with the following changes. Two, that under the authority granted the committee to consider matters not issued between the two houses, the following amendments be recommended. Respectfully submitted to Senate Committee Senators Donovan, Scott, and Todd. House Committee Representatives Gray, Hooten, and Liston.
House requests for conference committees. In response to a request from the House for a conference committee on House Bill 1160, the Senate conferees are Senators Lee, Chair, Janal, and Gardner on the first conference committee on House Bill 1160. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that the conference committee on 1160 be given permission to go beyond the scope of the difference between the two houses.
The motion before the body is to grant permission to the conferees on the first conference committee on House Bill 1160 to go beyond the scope of the differences between the two chambers. Is there discussion? Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like a little more information on what they would like to do that goes beyond the scope, please.
Senator Lee.
To be honest, I don't know what they did over there at the House. This was a bill for a mental health facility. I think what the bill provided was that there could be 2 mental health facilities and that they had to be from different counties. I think what they wanted to do, if there was only one applicant, that the other applicant could be from that county. I believe that's what the amendment over there was. But I just got this.
Is there further discussion? Senator Sonnenberg.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I'm always reluctant to allow a conference committee to go beyond the scope when part of the discussion, if we don't know what that discussion is or where the conflicts may be. As of right now, I would ask for a no vote to go beyond the scope until we know why they actually need to go beyond the scope.
Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was hoping the bill sponsor might hang tight here in the well for a moment. I've just seen this is a House bill. It came to us second, and I'm wondering if there's been any communication maybe from House members of an amendment that we might have made here that they disagree with, because they would have sent us a bill that they I would think they would have agreed with whatever they passed out of the House. In looking at the revised version of the bill that passed second reading in the Senate on April 23rd, it does look like on page 5 of the bill that there was at least one Senate amendment that affected the bill, lines 1 through 13, and also possibly the appropriation, though that is shaded in gray. It looks like that happened in the House. Maybe it was just a renumbering for section 4. So I don't know if any of that is helpful to the bill sponsor, but my guess is that the House is finding some objection to what appears on page 5, again, lines 1 through 13. Just wonder if the bill sponsor has had an opportunity to look at that, and maybe if he has any perspective on what the House side of the conference committee might be looking at as far as that amendment or going beyond the scope of differences.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. The language referred to by the minority leader merely was an addition which allowed the long-term care ombudsman access to the mental health facility, and that was language that was left out. They have typically get access to all of those facilities, so that's what was added in.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you again, Mr. President. So I'm just wondering if there's been any communication from the House. That would seem to be the section of bill that they would maybe have disagreement with, and why would they need to go beyond the scope if there is something within that assortment of lines on page 5, again, 1 through 13?
Can we get a senatorial 5?
Senate will stand in a senatorial 5. Senate will come back to order. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I withdraw the motion previously made on 1160.
The motion to go beyond the scope of differences has been withdrawn by Senator Lee. In response to a request from the House for a conference committee on House Bill 1253, the Senate conferees are Senators Gonzalez, Chair, Fields, and Heisey on the first conference committee on House Bill 1253. Third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side, I move to reconsider House Bill 1257. 1257.
The motion is for reconsideration of House Bill 1257. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted and reconsideration is granted. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1257.
House Bill 1257, Representatives Becker, McCluskey, also Senators Cord and Priola, concerning authority for the state to keep and spend all the revenue in excess of the constitutional limitation on the state fiscal year spending beginning with the 2019-20 fiscal year in order to provide funding for public schools, higher education, and roads, bridges, and transit.
Senator Cord.
Thank you, Mr. President. Being an extremely generous person, I move House Bill 1257 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1257 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senators Lundin, Marble, Hill, Coram, Rankin, Sonnenberg, Heisey, Crowder, Woodward, Cook, the Minority Leader, Smallwood, Tate, Gardner, Scott. With a vote of 20 ayes, 15 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1257 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Foote, Story. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order to take up House Bill 1203.
Just get it back.
The motion before us is to proceed out of order to take up House Bill 1203. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1203 will be taken up. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1203.
House Bill 1203, Representative Malcolm Todd, concerning the creation of a grant program to increase the number of school nurses in connection with making appropriation.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. And once again, I'm really proud to move House Bill 1203 to provide more nurses in our schools across the state with a primary focus on our rural areas and our high-need schools. So I move House Bill 1203 and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. Just want to reaffirm that I was a yes vote in committee on this bill. I'm going to be a yes vote again today, primarily due to the conversations that we had regarding the intersection between physical health, mental health, behavioral health. I think this is a good use of dollars. I'm not, again, like we have heard from our colleagues before, not crazy about grant programs, and still commit to you to look into how much we're spending on FTEs and administrative costs for grant programs. But I think this is a good step towards helping the kids. So I'm going to be aye vote on 1203. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, just a reminder on what we're talking about here. We're talking about a grant program for 5 years, run not out of DOE, but CDPHE, and it precludes many of the districts, the smaller districts, that may not be able to fund this on their own, because the bill specifically says you have to consider their long-term ability to fund this. So for a small district with a couple $1 million budget, $100,000 or whatever it is all in to, fully funded new FTE on this, they can't carry this once the grant is over. And they'll be honest about that. I call it in the break, I called a couple of these districts, and they said, yeah, we're not going to be able to carry it. We can't take the risk on something, and the bill specifically says this is to be considered. So we can't commit to funding this after the grant is up. So why would we apply for the grant in the first place? So we've written a program, again, not from bad intention, but we've written a program that excludes our smallest districts. Now, our smallest districts are the ones most likely not to have a school nurse in the first place. And so, colleagues, my argument is, if we're going to, we can have a debate about whether or not we should be doing grant programs. But if we're going to be doing grant programs, let's do them well. Let's actually write good policy to target grant programs to schools that actually need this help. As it is, we can predict this, and colleagues, I think we will be approved when we suggest that the biggest districts are the ones that are going to be most likely to pick up this grant money. And maybe you say that's okay, because statistically maybe they're serving more kids, and that's what we came up here to do. But the argument for grant programs is that we're funding something that there isn't natural funding for available already. And all of these big districts have school nurses. All of the big districts I represent have school nurses. It's the small districts, it's the hard to serve areas that are the argument for making a grant program for this specific goal. And yet it's written right here in the bill to say their long-term ability to fund this after the grant expires is one of the key considerations in awarding the grant in the first place. So what is a district supposed to do? Be disingenuous and say, oh yeah, of course, we'll find a way to fund it, when they know full well they can't? Or to own up to it when they make the application and say, I'm not going to be able to fund this without the grant, and thereby precluding their ability to get the grant in the first place. Colleagues, I think we could find a much better way to do this. I think we could find a much more effective way to target school nurses in the areas that are hard to serve. Look, no one around here, no one in Denver, no one in North Colorado Springs where I live, no one in downtown Colorado Springs where I used to live, we don't have trouble getting access to a nurse. But what are the rest of our, we have 136, I think, small rurals. What are they supposed to do under this program? And so maybe the sponsor will be willing to speak to it, maybe not, given where we are this late in the session. Colleagues, I ask you, if we're going to write grant programs to incentivize specific activity for folks who wouldn't otherwise fund it, let's do so in a way that actually creates the ability for them to fund something. And this bill doesn't do that. Respectfully, I'd ask for a no vote.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a few questions about what exactly are the assigned duties of a school nurse. I am not sure they are able to give out even Tylenol. I don't know. And why does this require a special services license, and how much extra is that license for this school nurse? These are questions, if I could. I didn't hear this in committee. We didn't really have seconds on it, and I'm hoping that the good senator could give me some guidance on this, because I don't understand the assigned duties and the special services license. Why is that? They're nurses. I don't want to give any extra regulation on them. I just don't think it's necessary.
To the good senator from Fort Collins, this was debated on Saturday on second reading.
Those,
Senator Marble.
Senator, Mr. President, these are questions that came up that I hadn't had answered, and I just was wondering if it would be okay to ask to have these answered now.
The good senator is entitled to ask any question she would like. Please proceed, Senator.
Okay, well, those are questions that I think I would like to find an answer to, but the special services license is a requirement that I feel is unjust to a healthcare professional who has done so much in gaining their credentials and going through all of the testing and work that it takes to be who they are. Many of our nurses are highly qualified, and this part of the bill does concern me. I was told about it and that this was a concern of some people on the outside of the Capitol, and when they asked about the special services license and the cost of it, I really had no idea how much that would be. I think having nurses in schools is a good thing. I really think that sometimes it's a little difficult for kids when you have so many services under the same building, under a school. It gets hard for them to be able to go in and ask for the services. They don't want to be seen coming in and out of a counselor's office especially. And is this special services license because the nurse can direct a child to mental health services? How does a nurse know that a child needs critical mental health services? And when you have the school counselors there, aren't they the ones who would be doing the referring of these children to someone who is higher up and more highly trained than just the counselor? I'm not sure exactly what is going on with this, but mental health is pretty serious. And when we're looking at all of the suicide prevention that we're trying to do, is this special services license requiring the nurses to take in more training for that critical mental health identification? I think back to when we were in school, it seems like forever ago. The PE teacher was the one who recognized a sick child, and a lot of them had a lot of training. It was funny, the coaches and everyone seemed to be able to recognize and take into account when a child was sick. And so for a duty of a school nurse, and I'm not even sure if they can give out Tylenol, but they have to have a special services license, and one of their duties includes referring children for critical mental health services. Who do they refer them to? And they do serve a great deal. You know, they're so important, but I'm just kind of lost as for this. And I think it is a 5-year grant. We're looking at expenditures and a total FTE of 0.8 to get this done. And in appropriations for 2019 to 2020, an appropriation of $3.1 million. And I'm hoping that these nurses are really, and I can't be more serious, they're taking into account when these children come in and they have critical mental health services, that they're also taking into account the parents and are able to communicate with them in a very good, productive way about the things that are going on, and that the family together can take care of these issues. We've heard stories about how parents are cut out of so many of the issues that go on with children in school, and this goes for those children who want counseling. But what about when you have a pregnant teen? When they go in and talk, is this something that the school nurse will talk to them about? And where do they refer a pregnant teen? Are the parents involved in that? What happens? So there's a lot of questions about how all this works, and I know we're rah-rah about keeping the kids safe, and the kids are number one. But I do worry about where the parents fit in the families, and who they refer these children to, and hopefully those parents and those families fit in, because they have been left out of the equation. And a lot of the things that our students are facing are so important and too critical a matter to keep under wraps and away from the parents.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Shall the main question be now put?
The question is, shall the main question now be put? Are there any no votes? Senator Hill. Senator Sonnenberg. Senator Tate. Senator Marble. Senator Lundeen. Senator Heisey. Senator Woodward. Senator Gardner. Senator Scott. Mr. Minority Leader. Senator Rankin. With a vote of 24 ayes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, that motion is adopted. The motion is the passage of House Bill 1203 on third reading. Are there any no votes? Senator Hill, Sonnenberg, the Minority Leader, Lundeen, Heisey, Scott, Woodward. Mr. Minority Leader. Senator Marble. With 27 aye votes, 8 no votes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1203 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Zenzinger, the Majority Leader, Winter, Story, Bridges, Janal, Fields, Gonzalez, Pedersen, Crowder, Moreno, Lee. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order to take up House Bill 1242.
The motion is that the Senate take up House Bill, excuse me, that's in order. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of House Bill 1242.
House Bill 1242 by Representatives Jackson and Hawkins Lewis and Senators Winter and Tate concerning the regulation of pharmacy technicians by the State Board of Pharmacy and in connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1242 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1242 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Marble. Senator Woodward. Mr. Minority Leader. Senator Hill. Senator Lundeen. With a vote of 30 ayes, 5 no votes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1242 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Janal. Senator Bridges. Story. Crowder. Pedersen. Todd. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order to take up House Bill 1237.
The motion is to proceed out of order for the consideration of House Bill 1237. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we'll proceed out of order to take up House Bill 1237. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to House Bill 1237.
House Bill 1237 by Representatives Cutter and Will, Senators Woodward and Janal, concerning licensing behavioral health entities and connection with making an appropriation.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1237 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I have a point of inquiry. Looking at page 54 of the rules, it appears that Rule 9B and C would indicate that the prior action was taken prematurely. The previous question shall be stated in its form, shall the main question now be put, and until then it is decided, shall preclude all amendments or debate. When it is decided that the main question shall not be put, the main question shall be considered as still remaining under debate. When, by the affirmative vote of the majority of all members elected, it is decided that the main question shall be put, that shall be put to the end of all debate and bring the Senate to a direct vote, first upon all amendments reported or pending in the inverse order in which they are offered. After the motion of the previous question has prevailed, it shall be in order to move for a call of the Senate, but it shall not be in order to move to adjourn prior to a decision on the main question. And then C, upon a majority vote of the members elected, debate may be closed at any time not less than 1 hour after the adoption of a motion to that effect, and an hour may be fixed for a vote upon the pending measure. No other motion shall be entertained until the motion to close debate or to fix an hour for the vote on the pending question shall have been determined. Mr. President, I just wonder if you or the majority leader or someone has an interpretation other than mine that it seems to indicate that at least an hour would need to transpire between the motion of shall the question, main question now be put, and the actual vote. I would very much appreciate some other interpretation of that rule to help me understand how the vote could have been taken immediately.
Mr. Minority Leader, you have accurately described that passage of the rule subsection, and it is our understanding, in conjunction with counsel, that we are in compliance with that rule. Further discussion. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you have any explanation as to when the hour took place?
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is there a possibility that we could have a brief senatorial 5 so that council can explain this to both sides of us so we have an understanding of what Section C actually means and how it ties to B and A?
The good senator from Senator District 1, normally we would defer to that, but given that everyone has a copy of this rule and this has been used in the past, and I have addressed your parliamentary inquiry, we currently have House Bill 1237 before us, but you all are free to inquire with legal counsel as well. Further discussion on House Bill 1237. Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you please have Senate Bill or House Bill 1237 read at length?
Mr. Carpenter, please read House Bill 1237 at length. But actually, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Shall the main question be now put?
The question is, shall the main question now be put? Are there any no votes? Senators Hill, Sonnenberg, Scott, Cook, Woodward, Gardner, Rankin, Tate, Crowder, Heisey, Marble, Smallwood, Lundin. Mr. Minority Leader. With 20, Priola. With 21, with 20 ayes, 15 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused.
Mr. President, I wish to be recorded as a yes vote on 1237.
Senator Woodward will be recorded as the aye vote. With 21 ayes, 14 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1237 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Winter, Pedersen, Story, Gonzalez, Todd.
We never voted on the bill. We called the question, but we didn't take a vote on the bill.
The Senate will stand in a senatorial 5. The Senate will come back to order. Mr. Carpenter, please read House Bill 1237 at length.
House Bill 1237 by Representatives Cutter and Will and Senators Woodward and Janal concerning licensing behavioral health entities and in connection with making an appropriation. Being enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Colorado, Section 1 of Colorado Revised Statutes, add Article 27.6 to Title 25 as follows. Article 27.6 Behavioral Health Entities 25, 27.6 101 Legislative Declaration 1. The General Assembly declares that in order to promote the public health and welfare of the people of Colorado, it is in the public interest to establish and streamline minimum standards and rules for behavioral health entities operating in the state of Colorado and to provide the authority for the administration and enforcement of such minimum standards and rules. These standards and rules must be sufficient to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of behavioral health entity consumers. To the intent of creating the behavioral health entity license is to A, provide a single flexible license category under which community-based behavioral health service providers can provide integrated mental health disorder, alcohol use disorder, and substance use disorder services and meet a consumer's continuum of needs from crisis stabilization to ongoing treatment, be provide a regulatory framework for innovative behavioral health service delivery models to meet the needs of both individuals and communities, see increased party and oversight and protection of consumers' health, safety, and welfare between physical health and behavioral health regardless of the payment source, and D, streamline and consolidate the current regulatory structure to enhance community providers' ability to deliver timely and needed service as while ensuring consumer safety. 3, further, the General Assembly determines and declares that in administering and enforcing standards for behavioral health entities, the Department of Public Health and Environment should focus on behavioral health entity consumer safety and outcomes, reducing regulatory gaps to duplication and conflicts that hinder access to care, and allowing for new innovative behavioral health service types with minimal barriers. 4, it is the intent of the General Assembly that the behavioral health entity license implemented in 2 separate phases as follows. A phase 1 implementation includes the incorporation of facility currently licensed or previously eligible for licensure as an acute treatment unit or as a community mental health center, community mental health clinic, or crisis stabilization unit that was licensed as a community clinic. Such a facility will transition to the behavioral health entity license no later than July 1st, 2022 in accordance with Section 2527.61041. B, phase implementation includes the incorporation of behavioral health entities that provide behavioral health services for the treatment of alcohol use disorders and substance use disorders, except that phase 2 shall not include controlled substance license currently issued by the Department of Human Services, which shall be studied by the Behavioral Health Entity Implementation Advisory Committee established pursuant to Section 2527.6103. Such entities shall apply for licensure as behavioral health entities no later than July 1st, 2024 in accordance with Section 2527.6104.1, 2527.6102 definitions as used in this Article 27.6 unless the context otherwise requires. One acute treatment unit means a facility or distinct part of a facility for short-term psychiatric care, which may include treatment for substance use disorders that provides a total 24-hour therapeutically planned and professionally staffed environment for persons who do not require inpatient hospitalization but need more intense and individual services than are available on an outpatient basis, such as crisis management stabilization services. 2, alcohol use disorder means a chronic relapsing brain disease characterized by recurrent use of alcohol causing clinically significant impairment, including health problems, disability, and failure to meet major responsibilities at work, school, and home. 3, alcohol use disorder program means a program for diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation of a person with an alcohol use disorder. For behavioral health refers to an individual's mental and emotional well-being and actions that affect an individual's overall wellness. Behavioral health issues and disorders include substance use disorders, serious psychological distress, suicide, and other mental health disorders, and range from unhealthy stressors, clinical conditions to diagnose and treatable diseases. The term behavioral health is also used to describe service systems that encompass prevention and promotion of emotional health and prevention and treatment services for mental health and substance use disorders. 5, behavioral health disorder means one or more of the following. A, an alcohol use disorder is defined in subsection 2 of this section. B, a mental health disorder is defined in subsection 12 of this section. Or C, a substance use disorder is defined in subsection 14 of this section. 6, behavioral health entity means a facility, provider, or organization engaged in providing community-based health services, which may include behavioral health disorder services, alcohol use disorder services, substance use disorder services, including crisis stabilization, acute or ongoing treatment, or community mental health center services described in Section 2766.101, 2, and 3, but does not include A, residential child care facilities defined in Section 26610233, or B, services provided by a licensed certified mental health care provider under the Provider's Individual Professional Practice Act on the provider's own premises. 7, community-based means outside of a hospital, psychiatric hospital, nursing home. 8, community mental health center has the same meaning as defined in Section 2766.101. 2, 9, community mental health clinic means a health institution planned or organized, operated, and maintained to provide a basic community services for the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of emotional, behavioral, and mental health disorders, such services being rendered primarily on an outpatient and consultative basis. 10, crisis stabilization unit means a facility that provides short-term bed-based crisis stabilization services in a 24-hour environment for individuals who cannot be served in a less restrictive environment. 11, apartment means the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. 12, mental health disorder means one or more substantial disorders of the cognitive, volitional, or emotional process that grossly impairs judgment or capacity to recognize reality or to control behavior. And intellectual or developmental disability alone is insufficient to either justify or exclude a finding of mental health disorder. 13, state board means the State Board of Health. 14, substance use disorders means a chronic relapsing brain disease characterized by recurrent use of alcohol, drugs, or both, causing clinically significant impairment, including health problems, disability, and failure to meet major responsibilities at work, school, or home. 15, substance use disorder program means a program for the detoxification, withdrawal, or maintenance treatment of a person with a substance use disorder. 25, 27.613, behavioral health entity implementation advisory committee creation, membership duties, repeal. 1, there is established in the Department of the Behavioral Health Entity Implementation Advisory Committee referred to in this section as the committee. The committee shall A, offer advice to the Department and the State Board concerning the phase-in implementation of the Behavioral Health Entity License rule promulgated by the State Board pursuant to this Article 27.6, implementation of the Behavioral Health Entity Licensing transition. B, provide ongoing advice to the Department regarding behavioral health entities and behavioral health entity licensing. And C, identify a coordinated and aligned process sharing information across state departments to ensure behavioral health services are available to all residents of Colorado. 2A, the committee consists of 1, the Executive Director of the Department of Public Health and Environment, Human Services, Healthcare Policy and Financing, and Public Safety, or their designees. And 2, the following members to be appointed by the Executive Director of the Department of Public Health and Environment. A, 1 member that represents crisis stabilization units or acute treatment units. B, 1 member that represents community mental health centers. C, 1 member that represents a mental health provider that is not a community mental health center. D, 1 member that represents a provider of substance use disorder treatment services that is not a community health center. E, 1 member that represents a provider of substance use disorder withdrawal management services that is not a community health center. F, 1 member that represents a provider of substance use disorder services that meets the definition of behavioral health entity in Section 2527.61026 but has not been subject to licensure by the department. G, 1 member that represents a substance use treatment provider from rural or frontier county. H, 1 member who is a consumer who has experience living with a substance use disorder. I, 1 member that represents behavioral health consumers. J, 1 member that represents family members, persons with a behavioral health disorder. And K, 1 member from an advocacy organization that represents behavioral health consumers. B, in making the appointments pursuant to subsection 2A2, the Executive Director shall consider the geographic diversity of the state. 3, the Executive Director shall agree to serve or make their designations no later than September 1st, 2019. The Executive Director of the Department of Public Health and Environment shall make his or her initial appointments by October 1st, 2019. In case of a vacancy, an Executive Director shall agree to serve or make a designation. The Executive Director of the Department of Public Health and Environment shall make the replacement appointment as soon as practicable. 4, members of the committee serve on a voluntary basis and serve without compensation, except that members are reimbursed for the actual and reasonable expenses incurred while performing their duties. 5, this section is repealed effective December 1st, 2025. Before the repeal, the committee is scheduled for review in accordance with Section 231203. 2527.6104, license required criminal and civil penalties. 1A, on or after July 1st, 2022 is unlawful for any person, partnership, association, or corporation to conduct or maintain a behavioral health entity without having obtained a license from the department. B, on or after July 1st, 2021, an entity seeking initial licensure as behavioral health entity shall apply for a behavioral health entity license if the entity would previously have been licensed as an acute treatment unit or as a community mental health center, community mental health clinic, or crisis stabilization unit licensed as a community clinic. C, facility licensed as of June 30th, 2021 as an acute treatment unit, community mental health center, community mental health clinic, or crisis stabilization unit licensed as a community clinic shall apply for behavioral health entity license prior to the expiration of the facility's current license. Such a facility is subject to the standards under which it is licensed as of July 1st, 2021 until such time as a behavioral health entity license is issued to any person who violates the provisions of this section is guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction thereof shall be punished by a fine of not less than $50 nor more than $500 and may be subject to a civil penalty assessed by the department of not less than $50 nor more than $100 for each day the person is in violation of this section. The assessed penalty accrues from the day the department finds that the person in violation of this section. The department shall assess, enforce, and collect the penalty in accordance with Article 4 of Title 24 and credit the money to the general fund. Enforcement and collection of the penalty occurs following decision reached in accordance with procedures set forth in Section 24.4105, 2527.615 minimum standards for behavioral health entities. Rule 1. On or before April 30th, 2021, the State Board shall promulgate rules pursuant to Section 24.4103 providing minimum standards for the operation of behavioral health entities within the state. In promulgating the rules, the State Board shall establish requirements appropriate to the various types of services provided by behavioral health entities. 2. On or before April 30th, 2021, the State Board shall promulgate rules that must include the following. A, basic requirements to be met by all behavioral health entities to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of all behavioral health entity consumers, including at a minimum 1, consumer assessment, care coordination, patient rights, and consumer notice requirements. 2, administrative and operational standards for governance, consumer records, and record retention, personnel admission and discharge criteria, policies and procedures, and quality management. 3, physical plant standards, including infection control, and 4, occurrence reporting requirements promulgated pursuant to Section 25.1124B, service-specific requirements that apply only to behavioral health entities electing to provide that service, including at a minimum standards for the service included in the definitions in Section 2527.6102 of acute treatment unit, community mental health center, community mental health clinic, crisis stabilization unit, and walk-in centers that meet the regulatory requirements for licensing and operations. See mandatory department inspection of behavioral health entities. D, behavioral health entity written plans detailing the measures that will be taken to correct violations found as a result of inspections submitted to the department for approval. E, intermediate enforcement remedies imposed by the department as authorized in Section 2527.6110(2)B. F, factors for behavioral health entities to consider when determining whether an applicant's conviction of or plea of guilty or nolo contender to an offense disqualifies the applicant from employment with a behavioral health entity. The state board may determine which offenses require consideration of these factors. G, timeline for compliance with behavioral health entity standards that exceed the standard under which a behavioral health entity was previously licensed or approved. 2527.6106 license application inspection issuance. 1, an application for a license to operate a behavioral health entity must be submitted to the department annually in the form and in the manner as prescribed by the department. 2A1, the department shall investigate and review each original application and each renewal application for a license to operate a behavioral health entity. The department shall determine an applicant's compliance with this Article 27.6 and the rules adopted pursuant to Section 2527.6105 before the department issues a license. 2, the department shall make inspections of the applicant's facilities as deems necessary to ensure that the health, safety, and welfare of the behavioral health entity's consumers are being protected. The behavioral health entity shall submit in writing in a form prescribed by the department a plan detailing the measures that will be taken to correct any violations found by the department as a result of inspections undertaken pursuant to this subsection. 2B, the department shall keep all healthcare information or documents obtained during inspection or investigation of behavioral health entity pursuant to subsection 2A of this section confidential. All records, information, or documents so obtained are exempt from disclosure pursuant to sections 2472, and 25.1124. 3A, with the submission of an application for a license to operate a behavioral health entity or within 10 days after a change in owner or manager of a behavioral health entity, each owner or manager shall submit a complete set of his or her fingerprints to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for the purpose of conducting a fingerprint-based criminal history record check. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation shall forward the fingerprints to the Federal Bureau of Investigation for the purpose of conducting fingerprint-based criminal history record checks. Each owner and each manager shall pay the Bureau the costs associated with the fingerprint-based criminal history record check. Upon completion of the criminal history record check, the Bureau shall forward the results to the department. The departments may acquire a name-based criminal history record check for an applicant who has twice submitted to a fingerprint-based criminal history record check and whose fingerprints are unclassifiable. B, the department shall use the information from the criminal history record check performed pursuant to subsection 3 of this section to determine whether the person applying for licensure has been convicted of a felony or misdemeanor that involves conduct that the department determines could pose a risk to the health, safety, or welfare of behavioral health entity consumers. The department shall keep information obtained in accordance with this section confidential, for the department shall not issue a license to operate a behavioral health entity if the owner or manager of the behavioral health entity has been convicted of a felony or misdemeanor that involves conduct that the department determines should pose a risk to the health, safety, or welfare of the behavioral health entity's consumers. 5, except as otherwise provided in subsection 6 of this section, the department shall issue a renewal license to operate a behavioral health entity when it is satisfied that the applicant or licensee is in compliance with the requirements set forth in this Article 27.6 and the rules promulgated pursuant to this Article 27.6, except for provisional licenses issued in accordance with subsection 6 of this section. A license issued or renewed pursuant to this section expires 1 year after the date of issuance or renewal. 6, the department may issue a provincial license to operate a behavioral health entity to an applicant for the purpose of operating a behavioral health entity for a period of 90 days if the applicant is temporarily unable to conform to all of the minimum standards required pursuant to this Article 27.6, except that the department shall not issue a provisional license to an applicant if the operation of the behavioral health entity will adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of the consumers of the behavioral health entity. As a condition of obtaining a provisional license, the applicant shall show proof to the department that attempts are being made to conform and comply with the applicable standards required pursuant to this Article 27.6. The department shall not grant a provisional license prior to the completion of a criminal background check in accordance with subsection 3 of this section, or determination in accordance with subsection 4 of this section. A second provisional license may be issued for a like term and fee to affect compliance. No further provisional licenses may be issued for the current year after the second issuance. 2527.6107 license fees rules 1A by April 30th, 2021. The state board shall promulgate rules establishing a schedule of fees sufficient to meet the direct and indirect costs of administration and enforcement of this Article 27.6. B, the department shall assess and collect from behavioral health entities subject to licensure pursuant to Section 2527.6106 fees in accordance with the fee schedule established by the state board. 2, the department shall transmit fees collected pursuant to the section of the state treasurer, who shall credit the money to the behavioral health entity cash fund created in section 2527.61083. Fees collected pursuant to subsection 1 of this section may be used by the department to provide technical assistance and education to behavioral health entities related to compliance with Colorado law. In addition to regulatory and administrative functions, the department may contract with private entities to assist the department in providing technical assistance and education. 2527.6108. Behavioral health entity cash fund created. The behavioral health entity cash fund referred to in this section as the fund is created in the state treasury. The fund consists of money accredited to the fund pursuant to section 2527.6107. The money in the fund is subject to annual appropriation by the General Assembly for the direct and indirect costs of the department of performing its duties pursuant to this Article 27.6. At the end of any fiscal year, all unexpended and unencumbered money in the fund remains in the fund and must not be credited or transferred to the general fund or any other fund. 2527.6109. Employee or contracted service provider criminal history record checks rules of behavioral health entity shall require an applicant seeking employment with or seeking contract to provide services to the behavioral health entity to submit to a criminal history record check before employment or execution of a contract. The behavioral health entity shall pay the cost of the criminal history record check. The criminal history record check must be conducted not more than 90 days before the employment of or contract with the applicant. 2527.6110. License denial, suspension, or revocation. 1. When an application for an initial license pursuant to section 2527.6106 has been denied by the department shall notify the applicant in writing of the denial by mailing a notice to the applicant at the address shown on the application, and the applicant aggrieved by a denial may pursue a review as provided in Article 4, Title 24, and the department shall follow the provisions and procedures specified in Article 4, Title 24, 2A. The department may suspend, revoke, or refuse to renew the license of any behavioral health entity that is out of compliance with the requirements of this Article 27.6 or the rules promulgated thereunder. Suspension, revocation, or refusal must be done after a hearing thereon and in compliance with the provisions and procedures specified in Article 4, Title 24B1. The department may impose intermediate restrictions or conditions on a licensee that operates a behavioral health entity that may include one or more of the restrictions or conditions specified in section 2527.106(2)(b)(2). If the department assesses a civil fine pursuant to this subsection 2B, the department shall transmit the money to the state treasurer, who shall credit the money to the general fund. 2527.6111. Enforcement. The department is responsible for the enforcement of this Article 27.6 and the rules adopted pursuant to this Article 27.6. Section 2 in Colorado Revised Statutes add 2760.107 as follows. 2760.107. Behavioral health entity licenses, assistance, transfer of staff. 1. Pursuant to Article 27.6, Title 25, there is a behavioral health entity license issued by the Department of Public Health and Environment. Certain facilities that are licensed by the State Department will transition to the behavioral health entity license issued by the Department of Public Health and Environment. Prior to the transition, the office shall assist the Department of Public Health and Environment in the Behavioral Health Entity Implementation and Advisory Committee established in Section 2527.6103 in designating and designing and implementing the transition and informing facilities licensed by the State Department prior to the transition to one or more types of licenses or transition to the Department of Public Health and Environment. Employees of the office who were previously responsible for issuing licenses by the State Department may be offered positions in the Department of Public Health and Environment in accordance with the Department of Personnel Rules. Section 3, Colorado Revised Statutes 253102, amend 2 as follows. 253102, license application issuance certificate of compliance required. Repeal. 2A, in the licensing of community mental health center, acute treatment unit, or clinic, satisfactory evidence that the applicant is in compliance with the standards and rules, strike, and regulations on strike promulgated pursuant to Section 2766.102, strike CRS shall be unstrike is required for licensure. B, this subsection 2 is repealed effectively July 1st, 2021. Section 4 Colorado Revised Statutes amend 2766.106 as follows. 2766.106, federal grants and aid administration. 1, the department is designated the official mental health authority and is authorized to receive grants and aid from the federal government under the provisions of 42 U.S.C. Section 246 and shall administer said grants in accordance therewith. 2, the department shall continue to fund the cost of licensing activities related to the behavioral health entity license across the Department of Human Services and the Department of Public Health and Environment unless the money collected by the behavioral health entity cash fund defined in 2527.6108 through June 30th, 2024, Section 5 in Colorado Revised Statutes 231203 add 16A4 as follows. 2.3.1203, sunset review of advisory committee's legislative declaration definition repeal. 16A, the following statutory authorizations for the designated advisory committee will repeal on September 1st, 2025 for the behavioral health entity implementation advisory committee established in Section 2527.6103, Section 6 Colorado Revised Statutes 2433.5.1203, amend 1, page 5 as follows. 2433.5.1203, duties of division. 1, the division shall perform the following duties. P5, when there is no local building department or fire department or strike when necessary, on strike for facilities certified or strike seeking on strike potentially eligible for certification by the federal centers For Medicare and Medicaid services, conduct construction plan reviews and inspection of health facility buildings and structures, enforce the codes in accordance with sections 2433.5, 1212.5, and 2433.5, 1213, and issue certificates of compliance for such buildings and structures. Section 7 of Colorado Revised Statutes amended as added in Section 1 of this Act 2527.6105 2, introductory portion to be as follows: 2527.6105, minimum standards for behavioral health entities, Rules 2, 1/4, April 30th, strike 2021 on strike 2023. The state board shall promulgate rules that must include the following: B, service-specific requirements that apply only to behavioral health entities electing to provide that service, including at a minimum standards for the services included in the definitions in Section 2527.6102 of EQ Treatment Unit, Community Mental Health Center, Community Mental Health Clinic, Crisis Stabilization Unit, strike and on-strike walk-in centers, and alcohol use disorder and substance use disorder services that meet the regulatory requirements for licensing strike and on-strike operations in partnership with the state. Section 8 in Colorado Revised Statutes 25.1.5.103, amend 1A, 1A, and 1C, and add 2A.3 as follows: 25.1.5.103, health facilities, powers and duties of department, limitations on rules promulgated by department, definitions. 1. The department has, in addition to all other powers and duties imposed upon it by law, the powers and duties provided in this section as follows: A1A, to annually license, establish, and enforce standards for operation of general hospitals, hospital units as defined in Section 25.3.101, psychiatric hospitals, community clinics, rehabilitation hospitals, convalescent centers, community mental health centers, acute treatment units, behavioral health entities, facilities for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, nursing care facilities, hospice care, assisted living residences, dialysis treatment clinics, ambulatory surgical centers, birthing centers, home care agencies, and other facilities of a like nature, except those wholly owned and operated by a governmental unit or agency. C1, to establish and enforce standards for licensure of community mental health centers and acute treatment units as behavioral health entities. 2, strike the Department of Public Health and Environment has primary responsibility for the licensure of community mental health centers and acute treatment units. The Department of Human Services has primary responsibility for program approval at these facilities. On strike and performing strike, their respective on strike its responsibilities pursuant to strike. This subparagraph 2, both departments on strike subsection 1C1 of this section. The department shall take into account changes in healthcare policy and practice incorporating the concept and practice of integration of services and the development of a system that commingles and integrates healthcare services. 2, for purposes of this section, unless the context otherwise requires. 8.3, behavioral health entity means a facility or provider organization engaged in providing community-based health services, which may include behavioral health disorder services, alcohol use disorder services, substance use disorder services, including crisis stabilization, acute or ongoing treatment, or community mental health center services as described in Section 2766.101, 2, and 3, but does not include 1, residential child care facilities as defined in Section 26610233, or 2, services provided by a licensed certified mental health care provider under the Provider's Individual Professional Practice Act on the provider's own premises. Section 9 in Colorado Revised Statutes 25.3.105, add 1C4 as follows: 25.3.105, license fee rules penalty, repeal 1C4. This subsection 1C is repealed effective July 1st, 2022. Section 10 of Colorado Revised Statutes amend as added in Section 1 of this Act 2527.6104 as follows: 2527.6104, license required criminal and civil penalties. 1A, on or after July 1st, strike 2022 on strike 2024. It is unlawful for any person, partnership, association, or corporation to conduct or maintain a behavioral health entity, including a substance use disorder program or alcohol use disorder program, without having obtained a license therefore from the department. B, on or after July 1st, strike 2021 on strike 2023. An entity seeking initial licensure as a behavioral health entity shall apply for behavioral health entity license if the entity would previously have been licensed. Strike as an acute treatment unit or as a community mental health center, community mental health clinic, or crisis stabilization unit licensed as a community clinic on strike or subject to approval by the Office of Behavioral Health and the Department of Human Services pursuant to Section 2781.106, 2782.103 as an approved treatment program for alcohol use disorders and substance use disorders. C, a facility strike license as of June 30, 2021 on strike with a license or approval on or before June 30, 2023 as strike an acute treatment unit, community mental health center, community mental health clinic, or crisis stabilization unit license as a community clinic on strike. A behavioral health entity as substance use disorder program or an alcohol use disorder program shall apply for behavioral health entity license prior to the expiration of the facility's current license or approval. Such a facility is subject to the standards under which it is licensed or approved as of July 1st, strike 2021 on strike 2023 until such time as the behavioral health entity license is issued. Section 2 in Colorado Revised Statutes.
Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hereby withdraw my request to have this bill read at length, but I also withdraw my presumed consent to dispense with the reading at length of all future bills and request that every bill be read at length. Thank you, Mr. President.
House Bill 1237 has been withdrawn to be read at length. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1237 lay over to the end of the calendar.
The motion is to lay over House Bill 1237 to the end of the calendar. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and 1237 will be laid over to the end of the calendar. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow, Tuesday, April 30th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the balance of the calendar will be laid over until 4/30/2019. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate adjourn until 12:01 a.m. Tuesday, April 30th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand in adjournment until 4/30/2019.